The mahogany conference table gleamed under the soft glow of the chandelier, but the atmosphere in the lawyer's office was anything but warm. My son Daniel leaned back in his chair, arms crossed with the smug satisfaction of a man convinced he had just won the game of life. His wife Claire sat beside him, already tapping notes into her phone, as if the millions she expected were a mere scheduling inconvenience. "I told you, this is it," Claire whispered, her voice sharp with triumph. "All the years of waiting finally pay off. Once that farm is sold, we're set for life." The lawyer, Mr. Whitaker, cleared his throat politely, adjusting his glasses as he organized the thick stack of papers in front of him. But Daniel didn't wait. He reached across the table, sliding the pen between his fingers like a king accepting his crown. "Mom, you won't regret this," he said, flashing me that same charming smile he'd used as a boy whenever he wanted something. "We'll finally put that crumbling farmhouse to good use. Claire and I already have buyers lined up. You'll be comfortable in a senior condo, and we'll take care of everything else. Trust me, trust me." 2 words that tasted bitter after the last year of broken promises, quiet dismissals, and carefully delivered humiliations. I looked at the pen, then at my son's eager face, and finally at the woman who had been whispering poison into his ear since the day she married him. Claire's eyes glittered as she leaned forward. "It's what Harold would have wanted. He wouldn't want you stuck with all that responsibility. You've done your part. It's our turn now." For a moment, silence pressed in from all sides. I let it stretch, letting them both bask in the certainty of their imagined victory. Then, very slowly, I folded my hands on the table and met Mr. Whitaker's eyes. "Perhaps it's time we clear something up," I said softly. "You see, Daniel, Claire, this farm you're so eager to sell, it was never yours to begin with. It's mine, and according to your father's will, it always will be, until the day I draw my last breath." Claire's mouth fell open, her carefully painted lips trembling. Daniel froze, the pen hovering just above the signature line. "Wait, what?" he stammered. I smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "Let me tell you how we got here. The truth is, this story didn't begin in that polished office with gleaming wood and expensive suits. It began decades ago, on a stretch of land that smelled of cut hay in the summer and wood smoke in the winter. The Mitchell farm was more than just property. It was the blood, sweat, and heartbeat of my family for 3 generations. My husband Harold and I worked that soil until our hands were cracked and blistered. We raised Daniel in the farmhouse that stood proudly at the center of the land, its white paint peeling a little more each year, but its walls filled with memories. Every birthday candle, every Christmas morning, every night Harold returned late from the fields, covered in dust but smiling, happened in that house. It wasn't wealth, but it was ours. When Daniel was young, he ran through those fields with bare feet, chasing fireflies. He helped his father stack hay bales, though more often he toppled them over. He used to tell me that the farm was magic, that he could feel the land breathing. I believed him, because I felt it too. But somewhere, between childhood wonder and adulthood ambition, Daniel changed. The city called to him with promises of wealth, freedom, and sophistication. He wanted fine suits instead of muddy boots, boardrooms instead of barns, and cocktails instead of cattle. When he met Claire, his transformation was complete. Claire was not raised on hard work and sacrifice. She was raised on entitlement, luxury, and the firm belief that money was the measure of worth. She had the beauty to turn heads, and she knew it. She also had a sharp tongue and a talent for manipulation. To her, the farm wasn't heritage. It was an untapped asset, a financial stepping stone to the life she believed she deserved. I remember the first time she visited the farmhouse. She wrinkled her nose at the old oak floors, at the smell of fresh bread baking, at the mismatched chairs around the dining table. She smiled politely, but her eyes scanned every corner with thinly veiled judgment. Later that night, I overheard her whispering to Daniel, telling him he deserved more than this place, that he was meant for bigger things. At first, I brushed it off. New brides often dream of new lives, but the whispers turned into conversations, and the conversations turned into plans. Plans that excluded me entirely. Harold's sudden passing only sharpened their hunger. One moment he was strong, still mending fences and riding the tractor. The next, he was gone, leaving me with silence in his chair at the dinner table and a hollow ache in my chest. The farm, once filled with his laughter, became heavy with grief. Daniel came home for the funeral, but he didn't stay. He gave me a quick embrace, a stiff pat on the shoulder, and then whispered that Claire needed him back in the city. I watched him drive away, taillights vanishing down the dirt road, leaving me to grieve alone. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. I rose before dawn, carried on the chores Harold used to handle, and buried my sorrow in work. Neighbors offered help, but I was too proud to take it. I told myself that Harold built this life with me, and I would keep it alive for both of us. Meanwhile, Daniel and Claire visited only when it suited them. They arrived in expensive cars, carrying store-bought desserts they never touched, and spent their time calculating what the farm was worth. Claire would ask about the land value, about the property taxes, about whether I was struggling to maintain it. She framed her questions as concern, but I could hear the greed beneath every word. Daniel echoed her sentiments gently at first, then more firmly. He said I shouldn't have to work so hard. He said I deserved an easier life. He said selling the farm would give me comfort and security. But comfort and security weren't what he meant. He meant profit. He meant a cash windfall he and Claire could spend in the city, while the legacy Harold and I built crumbled into dust. I resisted at every turn. I told them the farm was more than numbers on a page. I told them it was history, love, sacrifice, and memory. But they didn't hear me. They only heard the sound of opportunity slipping through their fingers. One evening, after another argument, Claire leaned in close, her perfume sharp and artificial. She whispered in my ear, "You can't hold on forever, dear." Her smile was sweet, but her eyes were cold. In that moment, I realized what I was truly facing. It wasn't just ambition. It was greed. It was betrayal. It was the beginning of a battle I never asked for, but one I was now determined to win. The weeks after that conversation grew colder, even though summer still wrapped the farm in golden warmth. Claire's words echoed in my mind, not as a warning but as a threat. She wasn't going to wait for me to hand over the land. She was going to push, prod, and poison until Daniel believed it was the only choice left. They began visiting more often, not out of love but out of calculation. They walked through the farmhouse like strangers in a museum, pointing out cracks in the walls, stains in the ceilings, and the peeling paint on the porch. Claire shook her head dramatically, sighing as though the house itself was begging to be demolished. She would glance at Daniel, her expression a mix of pity and victory. One afternoon, Daniel stood in the kitchen, holding up a stack of bills I had left on the counter. "Mom, this is getting ridiculous," he said, shaking the envelopes like they were evidence of a crime. "Property taxes, utilities, repairs. How long can you keep this up?" Before I could answer, Claire's voice cut through, smooth as silk but sharp as glass. "She can't keep it up," she said. "Look at her. She's exhausted. This house is falling apart. The farm is too much for one woman." I felt my face flush, not from shame but from the sheer audacity. I had been up since dawn, feeding animals, mending fences, keeping Harold's dream alive. I wasn't exhausted from the farm. I was exhausted from defending myself against my own son and his wife. Another time, Claire brought her parents to visit, as if to showcase the ruin she claimed I lived in. They walked around the farmhouse with pursed lips and narrowed eyes. Her mother whispered loudly enough for me to hear, "This place should be sold. It's tragic, really. Such potential wasted." Her father chuckled and said, "I can already imagine condos here. Prime location, easy money." They spoke as though I wasn't standing right there, as though my life was already erased. The humiliation grew sharper with each visit. Daniel stopped asking and started insisting. He would say things like, "Mom, you're being unreasonable," or "You don't understand how much better life could be." Claire sat beside him, nodding, her hand resting possessively on his arm. It was always two against one, always them against me. One evening, they brought a real estate agent to the farm without even telling me. I found them walking the property, pointing at landmarks that had been part of my life for decades. The barn where Harold kissed me for the first time, the oak tree where Daniel carved his initials as a boy, the creek where we cooled off during sweltering summers. To them, it was square footage and selling points. To me, it was sacred ground. I confronted them right there in the field. "What is this?" I demanded. "Who invited her here?" Daniel's jaw tightened, but Claire smiled sweetly. "We're just exploring options," she said. "You should be grateful we're helping you." Grateful. That word pierced me like a blade. I was supposed to be grateful for the intrusion, grateful for the disregard, grateful for the theft of everything Harold and I had built. My hands shook with fury, but I kept my voice steady. Leave, I told them, all of you, now. The agent looked uncomfortable, but Daniel and Claire didn't budge at first. They stared at me like rebellious children caught in the act, except they weren't children anymore. They were adults who believed they had already won. Finally, Daniel muttered something under his breath and ushered Claire and the agent back to their car. They drove away in a cloud of dust, leaving me trembling in the field. After that day, the visits became less frequent but far more venomous. They didn't come with smiles anymore. They came with accusations. They told neighbors I was stubborn, reckless, even unstable. They whispered that I couldn't handle the farm, planting seeds of doubt in the very community that had always stood by me. I began to feel their absence in the places that once felt safe. A neighbor who used to wave from his tractor now looked away. Another who once shared tools with Harold suddenly avoided conversation. Slowly, Claire's poison spread, painting me as a frail old woman clinging to something she no longer deserved. The humiliation wasn't just in my home anymore. It was in every look, every whisper, every moment of isolation. And through it all, Daniel remained silent. He didn't defend me. He didn't stop her. He let her tarnish my name, my dignity, and the very legacy his father died building. One night, I sat alone on the porch, the stars above as bright as they had been the night Harold proposed to me. My hands ached, my heart ached, but beneath it all burned something stronger than grief. It was resolve. If Claire thought I would surrender the farm, she had gravely underestimated me. This land wasn't just property. It was proof that I had lived, loved, and sacrificed, and no amount of humiliation could strip that away. The breaking point came on a chilly autumn morning when Claire stormed into the farmhouse uninvited. She didn't knock. She didn't wait. She simply pushed open the door, her perfume trailing behind her like smoke. "This is over," she declared. "You're holding Daniel back. You're holding all of us back. The farm has to go." I stared at her, my hands still dusted with flour from the bread I had been kneading. "And who gave you the right to decide that?" I asked, my voice sharper than the knife lying on the counter. Her lips curled into a smirk. "Your weakness gave me the right," she said. "You can't even keep up with this place. Everyone knows it. You're a burden, and sooner or later, you'll have no choice." I wanted to scream, but something inside me shifted instead. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't even grief. It was clarity. I realized, in that moment, that Claire believed she had already beaten me. She thought the humiliation had broken me. She thought the whispers in town had convinced me I was powerless. But she was wrong. I looked her dead in the eyes and smiled, a smile that must have unsettled her because she faltered for the first time. "You've made one mistake, Claire," I said softly. "You assumed I was finished, but you've underestimated me, and that will be your downfall." After she left in a huff, slamming the door behind her, I sat at the kitchen table in silence. The bread dough lay forgotten, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. I thought of Harold, of the sacrifices we had made, of the promises we had whispered beneath the oak tree, and I knew what I had to do. The plan began quietly, hidden in the rhythm of daily chores, while Claire and Daniel believed I was sinking deeper into weakness. I was gathering strength. I pulled out Harold's old lockbox, the one hidden behind the false panel in the pantry. Inside were deeds, receipts, and most importantly, a letter Harold had written before his death, a letter that revealed a truth I had kept buried for too long. Harold had known what kind of woman Claire was. He had warned me in that letter that she would twist Daniel against me. He wrote that the land should never pass to them, no matter what pressure I faced, and he had given me instructions to protect it. Among the papers was the name of a lawyer Harold had trusted, a man outside of town who owed him a favor. I contacted him discreetly, making sure no one could trace the calls. He guided me step by step, helping me establish protections that Daniel and Claire could never undo. Piece by piece, I rebuilt my defenses, not just legally, but emotionally. I began repairing parts of the farm myself, no matter how small. I patched the roof. I repainted the porch. I cleaned every corner until the farmhouse glowed with life again. It wasn't just about the repairs. It was about sending a message to myself and to anyone watching. This farm is alive, and so are my neighbors. Started noticing. Those who had turned away began to nod again, to greet me with cautious smiles. The whispers shifted from pity to admiration. Claire's narrative began to crumble, though she didn't realize it yet. Meanwhile, I played the part of the frail widow whenever Daniel and Claire visited. I let them believe their barbs still stung. I let Claire strut through the rooms, mocking the worn floorboards and faded curtains, all the while I hid the truth in plain sight. The farm was no longer vulnerable. It was fortified, shielded by Harold's foresight and my determination. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat beneath the oak tree with Harold's letter in my hands. I read his words again, letting them seep into me like a blessing. You are stronger than you know, he had written, and when the time comes, you will defend what we built, not with anger, but with wisdom. Tears slid down my cheeks, but they weren't tears of weakness. They were tears of renewal. For the first time in years, I felt Harold's presence beside me, steadying me, reminding me of who I was. From that night on, I stopped reacting. I started acting. Claire thought she had driven me into silence. She thought she had erased my pride. But what she had really done was awaken a force she couldn't control. I wasn't just going to protect the farm. I was going to expose her. I was going to reclaim my dignity. And when I was finished, Daniel would see her for what she truly was, and she would regret the day she set foot on my land. The day of reckoning arrived on a stormy afternoon when the wind howled through the trees like an omen. Daniel and Claire arrived together, their car tires crunching against the gravel driveway. They didn't even bother hiding their impatience. Claire marched up to the porch, her heels clattering against the wood, while Daniel trailed behind her with his jaw set in stone. Enough games, Mom, Daniel said, not even bothering with a greeting. We're done waiting. The papers are ready. You're signing today. Claire stepped forward, her eyes gleaming. You've dragged this out long enough. It's embarrassing. Everyone in town knows you're just being stubborn. Do yourself a favor and stop clinging to something you can't handle. I leaned against the doorway, calm and steady, my hands folded in front of me. You think you know everything, I said quietly, but you don't. You've built this fantasy in your head that the farm is yours for the taking. It isn't. It never was. Daniel's face reddened as he stepped closer. Don't start this again. Dad would have wanted us to have it. He wanted us to carry on the family legacy. I met his eyes, unflinching. If Harold wanted you to have it, Daniel, he would have written it in his will, but he didn't. And do you know why? Because he saw through Claire long before you did. Claire stiffened, but quickly recovered with a laugh. You're delusional. Trying to twist Harold's memory against us? Pathetic. Daniel, don't listen to her. She's manipulating you. But I had been waiting for this moment. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Harold's letter, carefully folded and worn from the countless times I had. Read it. I handed it to Daniel. Read this, and then tell me again who's manipulating whom. Daniel hesitated, glancing at Claire, but curiosity flickered across his face. He unfolded the letter slowly, his eyes scanning the words, his lips moving as he read in silence. With every line, his expression shifted, anger draining into confusion, then disbelief, then something dangerously close to shame. Claire reached for the paper, but I stepped between them. No, I said firmly. He deserves to see it. He deserves to know the truth his father left for him. Finally, Daniel looked up, his voice hoarse. This can't be real. She's lying. This is fake, right? It's Harold's handwriting. I said softly. You know it as well as I do. He trusted me to guard this land because he knew you would be blinded by her. And here we are, proving him right. Daniel turned to Claire, his hands trembling as he held the letter. Did you know about this? He demanded. Did you know what Dad thought of you? Claire's eyes darted wildly, her confidence cracking. Of course not, she snapped. She's twisting everything. Daniel, you can't actually believe enough. Daniel roared, his voice echoing through the farmhouse. Enough lies, enough games. I don't even know who to believe anymore. I stepped closer, my voice calm but cutting. Then believe the evidence in your hands. Harold knew her poison. He wrote it down to protect us both, and I've honored his wishes every single day since. Claire's mask finally shattered. She lunged toward me, her voice shrill. You've ruined everything. You selfish old woman. Do you even realize what you've cost us? I held her gaze steady as stone. I've cost you nothing, Claire. You cost yourself the moment you decided to tear this family apart for greed. Daniel pulled her back, his face pale. Stop. Just stop. I need to think. But Claire wasn't finished. She spun on him, her nails digging into his arm. Think? What is there to think about? She's senile. She's lying. Are you really going to throw everything away for her? Daniel shoved her hand off, his jaw tight. I'm starting to realize I already did throw everything away. For you. Silence hung heavy, broken only by the crack of thunder outside. For the first time, Claire looked small, her arrogance stripped away. She glanced between us, searching for an ally, but found none. And then she did what cowards always do. She fled. The front door slammed, her footsteps fading into the storm. Daniel stood frozen, Harold's letter still trembling in his hands. I reached out, placing my hand gently on his shoulder. The truth hurts, Daniel, but it also heals. Now you have a choice. You can keep letting her control you, or you can take back the man your father believed you could be. Daniel's eyes filled with tears, his voice breaking. I don't know if I can. Yes, you can, I said firmly, because you're my son, and I will never stop believing in you. The storm passed overnight, leaving the farm bathed in the soft glow of morning light. The air was cool and fresh, as if the world itself had been washed clean of lies. I stood at the window, watching the sun rise over the fields Harold once walked with such pride. Beside me, Daniel sat in silence, the letter resting in his lap. For hours, he had said nothing, his mind no doubt a battlefield of regret, love, and shattered illusions. Finally, he broke the silence. I don't deserve this farm, he whispered. I don't deserve your forgiveness after everything I've done. I placed my hand on his, my voice steady. You are my son, Daniel. That is something Claire can never take away. You made mistakes, yes, but mistakes do not erase blood or love, or the chance to make things right. Daniel's shoulders trembled as tears welled in his eyes. I let her turn me against you. I let her poison me. And now look at us. I shook my head. Look again. We're still here. We're still Mitchells. And we're stronger for surviving her lies. Later that week, the truth spread like wildfire through town. Claire had vanished into the city, her reputation in shambles, her name whispered with scorn instead of envy. Neighbors who once looked down on me now came by with quiet respect, offering kind words, baked pies, and a hand of solidarity. It wasn't about their approval, not really. It was about reclaiming dignity, about standing tall in the face of betrayal and proving that love and truth could weather any storm. One evening, Daniel joined me on the porch as the crickets sang their nightly chorus. Mom, he said softly, I want to stay. I want to help you keep this place alive. Not because of inheritance, not because of obligation, but because it's where I belong. My heart swelled with a mix of sorrow and joy. Sorrow for the years lost to greed and manipulation. Joy for the son I had regained, broken yet rebuilding. Then stay, I told him. Stay and honor your father's memory with me. Together, we'll make this farm thrive again. And so, the work began anew. Daniel rose early with me, his hands blistered but determined, his eyes clearer each day. He no longer sought shortcuts or easy gains. He sought redemption in every furrow plowed, every fence mended, every seed planted. Season after season, the land responded. The farm flourished under our care, not as a prize for the greedy, but as a legacy preserved through sweat, faith, and resilience. Years later, when I looked across the fields and saw Daniel guiding his own children between the rows of corn, I knew Harold's spirit was smiling upon us. The curse of greed had been broken, the chains of manipulation shattered, and in their place stood something stronger, something unshakable. Mom, Daniel said one evening as we watched the sunset, I finally understand. This farm was never just land. It was a test, and we nearly failed. I squeezed his hand, but we didn't. We endured, and that's what makes us worthy of it. And with that, the story of betrayal, survival, and quiet vengeance came full circle. The woman they underestimated, the mother they tried to discard, became the keeper of truth, the protector of legacy, and the living proof that justice doesn't always roar like thunder. Sometimes, it whispers like the wind, steady and unyielding, carrying the promise of tomorrow.